Let's go ahead and convert our tessellation multiplier and our intensity here for our displacement map to parameters so we can easily tweak them. We'll call this one tessellation, and this one we will call displacement intensity. Let's go ahead and save our material and create a material instance. Right-clicking on it, we'll choose Create Material Instance, and we'll call it mi_rug. Let's make sure to apply it to our rug mesh object in the scene. That should go on element 0. Let's go ahead and open up our material instance now, and we'll enable displacement intensity and tessellation. Let's go to wireframe mode so we can see the effect of the tessellation more readily. Right now we're at a value of 0 on our tessellation multiplier, so what we're seeing here is the shader ball without any tessellation being applied. Let's go ahead and set this value to a value of 2. At a value of 2, we can see a considerable amount of extra polygons being added to the mesh here. Dropping it back down to a value of 1, we can see the tessellation multiplier at its lowest setting. Of course, again, setting it to 0 effectively turns it off. Let's set it to a value of 4. Let's go ahead and save this and jump into our viewport. Here we can see the final effect of the tessellation being applied to the rug. If we zoom in a little bit closer here towards a leg, we can see the jaggedness of our rug here, of the individual strands of the rug, up against the table leg. Now the effect does not look that good when you're really close to the rug, obviously, but moving away from the rug, the effect becomes much more believable. And generally your viewer's perspective will be from a higher position such as this. Let's play with some of the settings here, however. For instance, the displacement intensity, let's set this to a value of 8. So displacement intensity allows us to control the height of the individual strands of our rug. So if we wanted something more shaggy, we'd want to increase this value here. Let's go up even higher to a value of 12. Now you'll notice too that as we increase the intensity of our displacement map, when we're down at an oblique angle like this to the rug, we're going to start seeing some artifacts where the displacement mapping does not appear to work as well. Another issue when you have a very high displacement intensity where the individual strands are really tall is that the viewer will probably see the edge here, like this, where the rug itself, the strands are not meeting up with the border of the carpet. We can use Vertex colors to fix this issue by blending out the displacement mapping effect along the edges of the rug. With the rug selected, we need to go to the Painting tab. When doing this, since we're using a displacement material, the mesh will disappear if RGB channels is enabled in the color view mode. We can either switch it to off, allowing us to still paint, but we won't see the vertex color information as we do, or we can leave RGB channels on and temporarily change the material to the world grid material. From here, make sure our paint color is set to white, then fill the entire rug with that white color. Switch to black now and adjust the brush size so that it's very small. We can now paint the vertices along the rug edges black, essentially disabling the tessellation there, and of course blending into the white. We now want to open the material and multiply the displacement map graph with a vertex color node. So we'll right-click and do a search for vertex color. And now we need to multiply, and then we can connect them up. Now we can save the material and continue painting until we get the look we're going for. At this point, I prefer to paint with RGB channels set to off and the actual displacement material applied to the mesh. This allows me to see the effect in real time as I make adjustments. Bear in mind you may have to make your brush very small and paint right on the edge to get this to work. Otherwise, your rug's going to have a rounded fall off from the edge to the full white parts. Now let's take note of the tessellation multiplier. Let's drop this down to a value of 1. We can see the effect is not quite as interesting at this lower value. And obviously, again, setting it to 0 turns it off. But let's try setting it even higher to a value of 8. As you can see, setting it to a higher value, it does increase the quality of our tessellation effect, but it does come at significant cost because we're adding a lot of extra polygons here. Let's look at an example of using an object that isn't as tessellated in the source mesh. For that, we simply need to go to the Modes panel and then Basic. Look for the plane object and then drag that into the scene. Let's go ahead and add the MI rug material instance here. And we can see that the same exact material instance settings that we have for our tessellated mesh here do not work as well on the planar object. If we open the planar mesh object in the static mesh editor and then go to wireframe, you can see it's only composed of 2 triangles. And this is why the material is not having the same effect as it is having on our carpet here. So keep this in mind when you're building meshes that you want to apply this type of displacement mapping to. They are going to need more detail in the base cage. Displacement mapping is great for adding extra physical detail to geometry, but it's also perfect for creating other effects like fur and rugs, such as we've just seen. But keep in mind that using displacement mapping is going to require a higher level of detail in the original mesh, and it also adds significantly more detail through tessellation. This will have an impact on performance potentially, so use displacement mapping sparingly. Up next, we're going to look at one final example material effect that will allow us to add vertex-based animation to objects, such as curtains or plants blowing in the wind.